Today on Sagittarian Matters, advice on love, liberation, boundaries, and more with my very special guest, Dean Spade. Stay tuned.
Sagittarian Matters, Sagittarian Matters, what's the matter with you? Sagittarian Matters.
Dean Spade has been working to build queer and trans liberation based in racial and economic justice for the past 2 decades. He's a professor at the Seattle University School of Law and the author of the books Mutual Aid, Building Solidarity During This Crisis and the Next, and Normal Life, Administrative Violence, Critical Trans Politics, and the Limits of Law. Dean joined me in the Sagittarian Matters social distancing studios to give love advice to listeners in honor of his new book, Love in a Fucked Up World, How to Build Relationships, Hook Up, and Raise Hell Together. Now please enjoy my talk with very special friend to the show, Dean Spade. Dean Spade, welcome at long last to Sagittarian Matters.
Thank you for having me.
Can you describe where we are right now and what's happening?
We're in your living room. We're hoping the dog doesn't decide to be disoriented and bark. It's nighttime early. Winter.
Producer Ponyo has been giving little kind of intermittent woofs, wondering if she can have some of this birthday cake because we're in the Sagittarian Matters social distancing studios on the eve of my birthday.
It's real.
It's real. And please tell us the occasion. I mean, I've wanted you to be on the show forever, and now we are here on the occasion of your book that's coming out. Can you please tell us everything about your book?
Definitely.
Okay. Love in a Fucked Up World.
Love in a Fucked Up World is the name of this book.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming out January 14th. It is a sex, romance, friendship, self-help book for people who are like feminist, anti-racist, anti-capitalist, like political. And part of that's based on how most of the self-help literature is like kind of unreadable for people who have those politics. Like it's very like oriented towards upper class white straight people. It's very like individualizing of our problems, doesn't put them in a political context that we know they come from. So this book is like based in my many years of being in our movement and seeing how we kind of like wreck our groups and the projects we need to be in because we fall apart over these kind of internalized toxic norms from the mainstream. And we need to do a little looking at them and noticing that they're like patterns we all have together. They're not something individually wrong with us. And yet they deserve some attention so that we can stick together better because things are pretty fucked.
Can we go a little deeper on like the connection between your other book publishing projects, Mutual Aid, and this romance book? And also, I also want to bring into that triangle meditation practice or like your spiritual practice, like the core of that, because I think it's really interesting.
Just casually bring that in. Love it.
Casually bringing that in.
No problem. Yeah, I mean, I think maybe it would be surprising looking at my other books and what I've been primarily doing for the last 25 years to be like, why is this person writing a sex and romance and friendship self-help book? Different genre for sure.
Yeah.
Because my work has been like very seriously about how to build effective social movements, a critique of law reform, a critique of, the state, and a lot about kind of what it means to do our own taking care of each other and fighting back from a grassroots level, not institutionalized, how to do that together. But obviously what that leads to, I mean, people have told me that the second half of my mutual aid book sounds to them like a self-help book because it's a lot about like, how do we work together in groups and not hurt each other? What do we do with the stuff that like inevitably comes up between us because we are raised in a hierarchical, brutal, extractive society. And then we're trying to like do work together to like save each other's lives and fight back. And, it's really hard. And so, I've just been in that work all this time and seeing that, our resistance movements are only as strong as our relationships because that's all they're made of.
Yeah.
And so this area of life, sex, romance, friendship, especially sex, romance, it's kind of like where people act their worst, And so there's a lot there, like a lot of internalized nonsense from the society, a lot of playing out stuff from family histories. And it feels like a urgent matter of strategic attention for me that we examine it. How does this relate to my spirituality and our shared love of silent meditation retreats? I am curious whether people will see this as a Buddhist book. I never mentioned Buddhism in the book. I don't think it needs to be named in some ways because it's really just about like, this book is about becoming liberated by being in reality.
Mhm.
It's like, I want to engage with other people, not like filtered through the romance myth, not filtered through the relationship escalator, not filtered through coercive norms about having the perfect body and marriage and house. Like, I want to enter reality and like fight for liberation from a place of reality. And when I'm seeing you through those lenses, it's limiting my ability to live my values. And so this book is a lot about like, what are the common patterns of thinking and feeling that get in the way? And that's about coming into being present with what's actually happening now, which is also what I think all the spiritual traditions I'm interested in are about.
Yeah.
So maybe there's the connection there.
Yeah, there's a lot of acceptance. For me, I mean, I feel like the core value of compassion and just like getting out of dehumanization, even if you feel really entitled to, or even if you feel justified. And I think that's probably really hard when applied to romantic relationships because it feels so sensitive because you're dealing with maybe your youngest self, like your oldest wounds. And so it is easy to villainize somebody else. And then what if you have to be in the same liberation struggle with them and see them again and again? Like, can you have compassion for that person, even though they really hurt your feelings?
Yeah, or just like in the same town as them or in the same community as them. Like, I mean, our society is based on the idea that you can throw people away. And actually, it turns out you can't. Like, the person who's so irritating to you when you're 20 is going to like still probably be somewhere in your community. And maybe you'll even need something from them, or they'll be in crisis, or you'll be connected through something that really is really meaningful to you when you're 40 or 60. And so how would we act towards people if we didn't think we could, like, that it was like a shopping trip in which you like take some and like, you know, throw others into the trash can, or like whatever kind of consumptive, extractive way we're taught to see each other, like trade up for the next lover who's got more status or whatever.
Yeah.
Like terrible frameworks are kind of the norm of how romance, especially in straight culture, but I think it affects everybody, you know? I think this maybe is the first time I've ever publicly acknowledged that I have a Buddhist practice, possibly. And, you know, I've been like very intensely going on meditation retreats, silent meditation retreats for like 16, 17 years, you know, but it's interesting. There's a lot of things about putting this book out that are about like coming out. Like, I'm like, you know, there's like some insecurity, like, oh, I'm going to go from like primarily saying things publicly that are this very serious movement things to being like, no, I'm talking about sex and love and romance, you know, like just like this kind of like, which obviously, because I think there's very strong reasons that I already said, but it is really interesting to like expose the other very deep areas of study in my life that have not been my publicly claimed ones.
I mean, it's kind of like if one were to go to a 12-step program or an anonymous fellowship program, and then
Suggesting someone might.
And then one were to also study Buddhism, one might see some overlapping themes, which would make it all click more firmly into place, which is kind of how I feel about your book, the advice in your book, through that lens, kind of clicking more firmly into place.
The webinar I was just doing in the back room of your house before we got on this podcast, one of the things I was talking about was how 12-step programs are the largest mutual aid, like anarchist organization in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like horizontalist, no one's the boss. If you don't like it, you can take what you like and leave the rest. You can go form your own meeting and organize it differently. Like, there's no enforcement system. Like, it is, you know, it's not explicitly political, and much of it is unfortunately like kind of a depoliticized, like overly individualized pathologizing model, which we could have concerns about. But there are things to learn from each of these like genealogies of wisdom, you know?
Yeah.
And they have very overlapping questions about authority, liberation, reality.
The take what you like, leave the rest thing is huge. And
I wanted to call this book that. That was one of the titles I wanted. I said no.
I wish. Dean, are you ready for some advice questions?
I'm ready.
I mean, I could just talk to you about lots of stuff all day, but we have about 400 advice questions.
I want to make one disclaimer.
Yeah.
Which is like, one of the weirdest things about writing a self-help book is like, who am I to write this? Who am I to give anybody any advice? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we may or may not know that some programs we could be in suggest you should avoid giving advice, but this is solicited advice. But I do think we shall remember to not give people unsolicited advice.
On this advice program, on this podcast, we have before used the slogan like, unasked for help is hell. I am like a vampire hovering outside everyone's window being like, I'm not allowed to give you advice. But if you were to ask, if you could just open this window a little crack, I'm happy to fly right in. And so that's actually the reason why I have an advice podcast. So there is one place in my life where people will ask me for advice because it's not appropriate anywhere else for me to give advice. I guess as a teacher, I give advice, but
I permanently would like you to give me advice the rest of our friendship. Okay. Just so you know.
Okay. And also, I tried to put on matching clothes with Dean. I just wanted to let you know we're both wearing crew neck white sweatshirts. Mine has something on it, yours doesn't, but it was the closest I could do.
Thank you.
No problem. I wanted you to feel comfortable. Okay, are you ready for our first question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi. This message is for Dean Spade. My name is Glowkey, and I use they, them pronouns. I am wondering, how does one disengage from infatuation? How do I stop myself from unraveling in daydreams about a future with someone, even though I know that it's probably not possible or likely, and even though it feels good, because I like to do that. I'm a very good storyteller, and I love to live in fantasy. And I want to be able to stop myself when that's happening. Thank you. I think you're amazing. I think this whole idea is amazing, and I can't wait to hear the podcast. Bye.
Oh, no. I felt a little bit red when this person said, I'm a very good storyteller. I was like, oh, really? I see. Okay, how do you disentangle from infatuation? So you were just talking about reality? Okay, so I don't know if this answers your question or even comes close to answering your question, Glowkey, but, you know, I have heard people say before, like acceptance is not you co-signing on it. It's not you liking something. It's not you agreeing with something. It's just acceptance. So sometimes you might be like, but that's not the outcome I want. Wait a minute, but I don't agree with that. No, I don't actually want that person to be a scuzzball in real life. Like, I'm really interested in this. Sometimes sometimes acceptance is the answer and it offers all you need. But it's very uncomfortable. That's what I think. I have other de-escalation tactics for myself, which I'll tell you in a second, but I really want to know what you think. Because also, can you describe, Dean, this person hasn't read your book, so they may or may not be discussing like the escalation, the kind of elevator. But how do you break an infatuation and how do you keep from escalating something that's actually not giving you that reality? Yeah.
One of my favorite parts of this book, which I actually wrote like maybe 8 years ago, it's been waiting, in this book, is I have a 7-step method for de-escalating a crush. And this is a little bit hard to put in the book because I'm sex positive and crush positive. I want people to feel desire. I don't want to be like sex is bad. But sometimes it's not good for you, right? Like, it sounds like this person may feel like the pattern of constantly infatuating and telling the story is like leading to something that's not fun. Like, in some way, you're like, oh, I'm not getting what I want, or this person's not available. Or sometimes like someone's giving you like a clear message, like, I don't want you to pay this attention to me. There's lots of good reasons to learn how to like pull ourselves back from something that's making us feel bad or is like just not good for somebody, right? And the story in our culture is that Cupid's arrow strikes and we're powerless, and that is a very like disempowering and inauthentic story. So the way I think about it is like a crush or an infatuation is a set of practices. And, our job is to be like, what am I practicing? And am I choosing to practice that? And can I practice otherwise if I want to, for the benefit of things I believe in and how I want to feel? So for me, that's like looking at like, what am I practicing? Am I listening to like songs that make me think about my infatuation with this person while I ride the bus? Am I jerking off thinking about this person 16 times a day? Am I, Nicole nods. Am I, like, what are the things I do that, am I creating unnecessary reasons to see this person in person? Or to, we're in a mutual aid group together and I don't need to be having one-on-one electronic communications with them and I'm finding a reason to. Like, am I stoking this situation? And it's so not fun and a buzzkill to be like, I'm gonna stop. But this is like varsity level stuff. Like, can I, even when there's a lot of pleasure and delight and fire and kind of maybe getting a little chemical high there, say that's not what I'm trying to move toward on purpose. and I'm going to do different practices. And that practice could be anything. It'd be like, I'm going to listen to a different set of songs. I'm going to read something different. I'm going to think about something different when I jerk off, whatever it is you need to do that doesn't pile on. And one thing I have in the book is like kind of creating for yourself these little summary sentences. I have like a little Mad Libs, formula. Like, I can't remember the details, but it's something like, like write yourself, this is the reason, like the one sentence, this is the reason I don't want to do this. Like, this person's not available, or they've asked me to step off, or I'm tired of this pattern where I infatuate over people like who are available to, whatever it is, I want to connect with somebody who's interested in me too, or whatever the reason is you want to step away. And, like reminding yourself, like putting that in a piece of paper in your pocket and like taking it out every time during the day when you want to reach for that fun, distracting vibe,
Yeah.
and just kind of like, it's just a redirect. It's like you're self-parenting. You're like, you know what? We're not having candy for every meal because it makes your tummy hurt later. Like, it's okay to do that. And that's hard with sex and love and romance because we're told like, get swept up in it, surrender to it. Maybe it's your destiny. Maybe they are more special than everyone else. And it's like, no, I'm projecting. I'm always projecting. I could project on someone else. I could project differently. I could not focus on a crush right now. There's so many other ways for me to bring desire and aliveness. And it may at first just feel like a loss. But if you've decided that's what you want, you got to like kind of do this mental hygiene. I'm going to remind myself why I've decided this isn't actually pleasurable for me in the ways that I am truly seeking.
Yeah. Can I tell you, my advice feels a lot less mature than that?
Do tell.
It is a couple things. One is this is just ways to deflate a crush that you're just like, this is the best person in the world. I met the best person in the world and I can't think of anything else. I was at a long form community gathering once, and there was somebody that I had a crush on in my mind. And to balance it out, I made a list for myself of things they could do that I knew would immediately squash the crush. And I wrote like just things that I personally was like, if they wore their hat like this, if I found out this thing about I just wrote a list of things that to me personally would be like real boner killers. And I was like, any of these could be true. You don't know anything about this person. Any of these things could be true. Another thing is sometimes sitting down with a friend. Okay, I have to say like yes and to all of your advice. And go hang out with your fucking friends.
Yeah.
Go hang out with your friends. Don't talk about the crushes and like be present with them. Your phone, throw it in the ocean. Hang out with your friends. Also, not everybody. I tell the podcast all the time to go volunteer and do service. I went every Friday for 10 years and sat with senior citizens and did a zine about them. And nothing would bring me back down to earth from my just like crazed dating life as a young person than just sitting with senior citizens and being very present with them and also getting their take and also seeing over the course of 10 years, they saw a lot of different crushes and getting reminded of something outside of myself and also reminding yourself how many bozos you've had crushes on that felt just as important. Like literally sitting down with your best friend, make a list. Can you tell me from your friend's perspective, Dean, can you remind me, everyone you've ever heard me say I have a crush on? And then as Dean goes down the list, at some point you're like, oh God.
Embarrassing.
Oh, you're mortified. And you're like, and I told you that was the best person in the world. And you're like, oh yeah, you sure did.
Mm-hmm. The person you see least clearly is the person you think you're in love with or crushed with. Like that. It's like, and there's nothing wrong with that. That can be a beautiful process, but it's not a process of sober discernment.
Like you're high on the love drug.
Yeah.
Oxytocin is flowing. You are in limerence. You're in excitement. This is the best time of my life. I've never felt better. I've never made better decisions.
One of the things that I noticed that is so wild, because this is my favorite drug, is that when I'm in that with someone, especially when we're like on and we're like, having a sex haze and we're like, it's like you literally go to the beach and there's like 16 rainbows and 20 dolphins. Like actually It feels like the goddess is literally delivering you magic.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's like if I was there while I'm like in the throes of a breakup, if we just wouldn't notice the dolphins. Like, I don't know, like what actually, maybe there actually is magic in it.
Yeah.
But it's definitely like it arises and passes away. It's not lasting.
No. So good luck to you, caller. On to our next question.
Hi, my name is Kat, and I'm calling about some confusing feelings I have about just the role of masculinity and how racial capitalism and etc. The patriarchy has impacted relationships and love and sex. And I'm 23. I just turned 23. I've been on low dose tea for a couple of years, and I've grown very scared of my own masculinity in the context of sex and love. Scared that I'm being predatory or domineering, or when I have big feelings about someone, I feel like I'm trying to trap them or something. Like I have all of these conflicting feelings about monogamy and marriage and all of those things, but then I still like have a desire to love someone in that couple form, but then I'm wondering if that couple form in itself is manipulative and not right. And I don't know how to reckon with these feelings. I don't know if when I have really how to separate feeling fond and tender and curious about someone, and then feeling like, and then on the other end, like wanting like access and control in like a manipulative way. And I was just wondering if you all had any advice, because I can feel quite discouraged, like I don't know how to love. Okay, thank you. That's all. Bye.
Oh, Pat, you do know how to love, Pat.
I love this question.
I mean, what is the core question? How do I love without control?
I think there's two questions.
What do you think the two questions are?
Is all masculinity toxic? No.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I think part of it is just like it's hard for us in our society to be like, oh, there's non-toxic masculinities. There's ways to play with those energies that don't have to be not consensual, controlling. And the second question is about how to enjoy the third rail that is set up in all of our psyches about all of these intense power dynamics through which our society flows and through which our sexuality flows, and in which our sexuality is a great place to play, and how to do that consensually and pleasurably, and so that you can actually touch the third rail and play around with all of that stuff without actually feeling like you have to harm others. And so this is a question about kink and consent to me, and role play. It's like, it's okay to want to play with possession, control. Like there's such a beautiful, rich queer history of all the like hot, incredible ways we can do that and find people with whom we do that consensually. Oh, and there's one other piece of the question too, which is, you know, Pat's very brilliant. And there's these questions about how, like, of course, racial capitalism and patriarchy set up the couple form and install in us these desires that can be jealous and possessive, and also about like prioritizing certain relationships and setting up a life that's domesticated in ways capitalism wants and whatever. And so, yeah, how to find choice when that stuff's all been installed in our psyches. How do I know if I actually want you to be my girlfriend, boyfriend, lover forever, or whether like I don't know how to think otherwise about sexuality and desire? You know, like how can I like find choice in the midst of like a very coercive script which has me in its grip? You know,
I think that question that goes with that question is like, Pat just wants to know, will they be okay if they're not clinging? Will somebody still love them? Will they still get what they need if they're not jamming it into a form that they were, will they still be okay? Will they still be loved and chosen?
Also, are they bad? I'm hearing, am I bad for having these feelings? And the answer is absolutely not.
No.
Right? Like it's not only are you not bad, but if you want to, you could play with turning them way up in a scene with somebody who is also not your partner. You can be like, I completely own you. And no, it's not exclusive. You can like let the parts of you that have those wild, intense desires that are mixed in with our societal scripts out to play. And then also have a part of yourself that's like, I really love other people's autonomy, and that's what I truly believe in and want. Like you can have both of those principles, but not if you don't, like you got to step into choice around it enough that you can be openly communicating with the other person that we are playing at that. And I think most people's relationships are like non-consciously, non-consensually playing with possession and all these other, you know, control, etc. And that's heartbreaking. I mean, that's kind of what heterosexuality really is, but also a lot of queer relationships are like that too.
But what do you think, Pat? Okay, so say that Pat meets somebody. They start doing kink stuff. Pat's getting really into them. Pat's like, I don't want this feeling to end. I have a good idea, and I think that is to lock it down, to make as many rules around this person as possible so there's no way that I would ever get less love than I'm getting right now. How would you, like, if once like the kind of like possession kink thing like just like bleeds into their life, like how does this person kind of disentangle from that, which is in line with their values?
I mean, if Pat and their partners want to try that more hours a day, they're allowed to. Like there's not like a right answer of how much of that people should play. You know, like I think that what many people find is that when you make something, when you lose enough critical distance or autonomy, it might stop feeling like choice. You know what I mean? But like people play very, very deeply with that. So I think that's something you can only learn by experimentation.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah.
I think, Pat, you're going to be okay even if you let go. I heard someone say, insert the word you want here, but God's not going to let you fuck up something that's meant for you. And you can like put whatever word you want in there. Dog, Mother Nature, whatever. If it's meant for you, it just is. And it's just you grabbing harder and like shoving someone into a cage is not the thing that's going to make them love you and stay forever.
But if you want to like,
but I mean, you can if that's their kink,
right? If you want to shove someone into a cage on purpose, not like
they might love you forever.
You know what I mean? Like, admit that you're shoving them into a cage.
Go watch the movie Misery and then be like, okay, he didn't love her more.
Burn.
She hobbled his feet. She locked him in the house. He didn't love her more for that. Okay, this one's hard.
Uh-oh.
I'm going by people's phone numbers.
Hi, this question is for your episode with Dean Spade. I'm often told I have too much room for people with the way that I stay in relationships attempting to navigate conflict together. It's not that I feel desperate to make it work. I always leave when I need to do so to take care of myself. But I do admit sometimes it feels so painful and maybe more painful than it needs to be along the way. I have strong values in transformative justice and believe in people's need for safe contexts relationally to do their hard growth. But sometimes I end up feeling like a punching bag or like the cost when we finally get there was more to me than I'm meant for it to be. Recently, I had a breakup with someone with a really intense trauma background. I feel confused about whether or not the dynamic was abusive, but it was absolutely painful. I thought that if I provided the stability that she needed, she could do some of her healing work and we could be in the type of relationship we both deserved. But instead it got toxic and we were in an intense cycle of escalated conflict. Not physically or emotionally violent, but like too escalated to lovingly find each other. I really miss her, and the way the ending makes me feel is sort of helpless. And it's left me with questions about what it actually looks like to not abandon people to their traumas while not abandoning ourselves and becoming punching bags for their lashing out while they're trying to figure it out. I'm curious what advice you have for me that includes a transformative perspective on harm. I know that the answer isn't to stay no matter how I'm being treated, but leaving to prioritize myself too early on feels like abandoning people to faith systems have saddled them with, and honestly feels ableist sometimes. I know we are harmed in relationship and so can only heal in relationship, but I'm wondering where that leaves the people around us who love us. Okay, thank you.
I have really big opinions about this question.
What are they?
I have to say a couple of them.
Hit me.
Okay. It's not giving up on somebody. It's not, that person's pain has nothing to do with you. You can provide a healing space. You can provide kindness, compassion. You know, you can provide slowness, but like you need, and it's, I'm so sorry, like don't barf and gag, but like you do have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. And so if you're just completely depleted and then you're trying to like rescue somebody from that space, it's going to work even less than if you are completely nourished and showing up already loved. And then you have enough love as a container and also enough love to see them clearly and not be in love with their potential and accept them exactly where they're at. And exactly where they're at might be a really hard place that's really hard for you to tolerate. And it's just up to you whether or not you can be in that place with them. I don't know. I might, my read on this question is this person had a lot of trauma. Things got hard between them. This person tried to stick it out to try and save them or help them. And that's just not what was happening. And it's just because that's not in our power. It's one of those things. It's like you can add kindness to this person's life. You can show them that there's other safe people in the world, that there's lots of safe people in the world, that you are one, but you can't mortgage your own well-being for someone else's comfort. And you can't toss yourself in the trash, and it's not, you just can't do that for another person if that's not where they're at. You can add a little bit to their growth and help by being in a nice relationship, but you can't fix the thing. And believe me, I'm telling you this because I've really worked at it. I've really tried ever since I was a teenager to fix other people's trauma.
When I hear this story, I wonder, I think most relationships suffer from people not having enough friends. So I'm already the idea that it would be any one person's job, ideally this person who's struggling has a lot of people around her, not just her partner or date or whatever. And so the first thing I would encourage these two to do if they were still together would be what can we do to add more people to the support system? Because it's totally impossible. And then also, as I mentioned before, most people act their worst in their love relationships. So actually sometimes friendships are a better place to get support for your mental health crisis than your love relationship. Sometimes the love relationship is the worst place, or the most activating place, or the place where you act more bananas or feel more outrageously abandoned if someone doesn't text you back or whatever, which you wouldn't for a friend. So when you're going through a really hard time, a love relationship might actually not be the best thing to have going on. It could actually be friendships would be more steadying and supportive, and a bigger team of people to swap in and out if you're needing a lot of direct company or something like that. So that's the first thing I think of. And the second thing is the person who left the question, I would ask myself, where did I learn that I couldn't leave people because I was abandoning them? Why am I, it can be easy to be the other person's really traumatized and having a hard time and I'm the steady one. That story is never true. We have matching wounds. So what's my half of this story? What's my side of the street of why I'm drawn to this situation? What character am I casting myself as? What am I trying to correct from my childhood? Who did I wish I could rescue then? Or who did I have to rescue? Or who was I put in the role of supporting and didn't have any choice about it? There's the focus on the other and on that person's difficulty or trauma or pathology is often a bit misleading. And so I think it's come turn it around and be what am I getting out of this? Why do I choose this? And especially if I'm choosing it again and again, which many of us have a patterned choosing.
And it doesn't, I'm just trying to think of how would it feel for me if I was in a relationship with somebody who was trying to solve a problem for me so that they would like our relationship better. Would feel bad. Even if they had the best of intentions. Even if they were I'm doing this for your well-being, I'm doing this because I care about you, it would still feel a little bit disempowering. And, I know it's hard. It's really hard. There's entire programs.
I also worry about the framing around ableism and transformative justice in this. Liberation principles, including the principles of abolition, are about actually solving our own problems by having good boundaries and not calling on external authorities to solve them. They're about actually having better boundaries, not having less. It's not you have to give every single person who asks for it everything they need, and you're bad if you say no to them. That is not the values we're talking about. We're talking about a robust support system for everyone, so that every person, regardless of what kind of crisis they're in or situation they have, has support, and it's not all on any one person. And anybody can at any time be yeah, it's better for me right now to not be in this role with you. That I want to step into a different role or have a break. Or for you, a lot of people don't take enough time when they break up to be separate and not communicate, so they can't get out of their conflict, out of their same pattern dynamic. So I think we should remember that transformative justice is about having better and more no's and better and more consent, not having to stay with people. And because saying no to someone is not the same as throwing them in a cage, which is the thing we're trying to get rid of.
Yeah.
No.
I was thinking about breakups I've had that have gone better than other breakups. So basically because ideally, I talked about the lesbian model of this. Ideally you would want to be family with somebody who you really cared about. You would want to be in their life for a really long time, even if the romantic part doesn't work out. And there's something in our heads that feels, and I'm sure, this ties in with your book, but there's something in our head that says if the romantic part ends, the relationship is over. But that's not. What if you framed it just as, the sexy romantic part of this didn't pan out. I'm still in this person's life. I need some time for healing, whatever. But you can still be a support person, or you can still have a friendship or something. You can still be tapped in.
But I think most people I know in our communities don't give that enough time. It's like, I want to instantly be able to be your best friend, and we never stop the thing that was hard between us. So like, we're still acting out on each other, weird stuff that was from when we were a couple or whatever. And I have found sometimes that I need years of being a more distant acquaintance from you before we stop doing whatever that weird thing was. And thankfully, there's a lot of people.
Yeah.
So like, all of my emotional needs don't need to come from you. And if we need a break in order to stop acting that stuff out on each other, like that needs to be okay. And I feel like people's inabilities to say no and have boundaries can actually lead to a prolonged and much messier and more problematic for the whole community breakup, because we wouldn't let it go enough to let it transform. And then now I'm like telling everybody how horrible you are. If a lot of the stuff people later accuse each other of actually happens during that period.
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Hi, this message is for mutual aid icon Dean Spade. How long should you stay in a relationship if you know you want a different, really good relationship, but you know that you see different futures for yourselves?
Speed round.
I do think that if one person wants to like move somewhere really far away that the other person doesn't want to, or one person wants to have kids and the other person doesn't want to, like those kinds of big things, just let it go. Like just, or like become a different kind of thing. Like, yes, go find someone you want to do that with, and I'll still be the person you fuck when you come back to town or when your kid's getting babysat or whatever. But like letting real differences be is very hard for people because we are very emotionally attached. And the other piece is like, is this sometimes the other thing where it's masquerading as a really important difference, but actually it's like, if I'm completely committed to your autonomy and I want you to do, you want to go to graduate school, great, or you want to change whatever, we've been living together, you want to live apart, great. Like if I can be flexible about what you do and what I do, like none of us knows the future. So unless it's like a concrete thing that like actually is just a total mismatch, is it actually just kind of masquerading and creating, it's really a conflict about like whether you love me enough or whether I'm free enough or like other emotional stuff, but it's masquerading as a like a pragmatic two different futures. I would question that.
I'm going to go with that.
Hi, I was just calling to see if I'm in a relationship right now, and it's long distance, and I'm wondering what is the appropriate amount to sacrifice in order to be close to the person that I'm seeing, since I'm not sure what my future will look like job-wise, but I do see them being in my future. Thanks.
I love this person's voice. I just want to say, I want them to be a voice actor.
I love all your callers. I love these questions. They're so good.
I want this person to be voicing like everything I'm listening to. I need to say something that I want to blanket for every single caller, which is 20 minutes of boundary work with yourself will save you like weeks and years of feeling muddled. Like if you just get a piece of paper and you write like, what are my bottom lines? What are my actual needs? Just for myself, pretending like all these people you're in love with don't exist, or just trusting that they will still, or whatever. What do you actually want? What do you actually need in your life and then in romance? But really having like that piece of paper in your pocket that's saying like, no, don't do, like having the piece of paper in your pocket. These are my bottom lines for my quality of life. Does this meet that? Yes or no? And that will really help inform a lot of these decisions.
Yeah, I mean, two things I would say. One is, and we've talked about this quite a bit, that like long distance relationships can be really hard to discern about because electronic communication and also like beautiful written letters and gifts from the mail and whatever, and short visits or visits that are like a vacation are very escalating. It's hard to tell what things would be like if you lived in the same town. And I especially find electronic communication to be like wildly, wildly escalating for me, but I love words.
Wait, can you talk about your definition of escalating? Can you talk a little bit about what that means?
Like, like an intensification, like more chemicals of excitement, more future tripping my mind about you. Just like boner town, just like getting more excited, getting more romantic. One thing that happens is when people are long distance, since you can't hang out in a casual way, all you have sometimes is like the escalation of like a late night phone call in which you confess a little more feelings or a little more fantasy, that if you were just in the same town, it wouldn't happen the same way probably. I think that there's just something about communication that way. So that's a dilemma. It's like, what am I getting myself into? Also, none of us ever knows the future of anything, but I think so. There's a danger there. So then it's just like, well, I don't know. Is it a fun adventure for you to move somewhere right now, even if it doesn't work out with them? Then do it. Like this kind of goes to your bottom line question. Like, how does this relate to other things I want for myself? Because we all know that there's a very large chance that if you move somewhere for someone, you will shortly thereafter break up. That happens commonly. That is very like, how many thousands of stories from our communities do we know like that? It's really a big deal. It's very hard to move somewhere and be that person's the only person you know in town. Everyone you meet is through them. It can be just like isolating for the new person. You start to realize, oh, we're not that similar. I don't actually love their friends. Most of us don't like perfectly love our date's friends. So then like, there's just a lot, like the loss of context of moving is big. Some people love it and it's a big adventure. I personally like love a new place. I'm a Gemini. But like,
you are
such a Gemini.
Wait, can we pause and say that's why we like each other so much? Because Sagittarius and Gemini are right across from each other on the zodiac. So we're like the most excited by each other. Sometimes the most repelled. But the most excited. Never repelled from. No, not this time.
This time it's all excitement.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about. I'm in a long distance relationship with Nicole, and if I moved here, I would possess you.
I think this is going to go great for the podcast.
It'd be really consensual. I would definitely negotiate it. Anyway, yeah. So I think that is. There's just a lot of there's a lot to think about there, and to honestly get advice from friends and think about what would be my plan if I moved there. How would I find a context like the one I have? What are the things I need out of a town? Is it like that there? What and this stuff is hard. A lot of the point of my book, I think, is actually it's very sobering. It's like, God, this is so fun and exciting. Now we can enjoy all those chemicals and all that rush, but on some level, you got to just be like, what the fuck is actually going on here? And just bring it down a level. And a friend can help with that. Like somebody who's not also high. Don't ask your lover to help you figure all this out because they're going to be like, you should see the waterfall we have here or whatever.
Your lover just wants to trick you into moving to the place where they live.
And it's just like you, which is very cute. We love how much they like you, but like this is your actual fucking life.
This is it.
And nobody is going to, like one person cannot, like the other point of the book is like the story that one person will make you happy. Like no one can make you happy. Life is suffering, and there's no permanent solution to that besides like our own endless seeking reality. And it's a huge setup that we're told that somebody will like finally love us the way that we were never loved by our parents, or that we'll finally be seen and heard, and that it's all going to be in one person. It just sets you up and you go on this cycle where first you project that they're doing it and they're going to do it and it's amazing. And then there's some moment where you feel like you actually land them and they're your person. And then you're wildly disappointed that that's not how it feels. And that's just the cycle. It's not because any of us are bad or actually disappointing or anyone misled anybody. That's just the cycle. So if you're in the first part of the cycle, you can anticipate the second part of the cycle, which has beautiful opportunities to build actual intimacy. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just coming.
I've been in a very long-term, long-distance relationship, and I'm thinking about your question. I'm thinking about what's the appropriate amount to sacrifice to be close to the person you're seeing. And it really is like, is it destabilizing, I guess? Because I've had moments where I've had a lot of different experiences with long distance, where I've had experiences where like my partner was touring all the time and I felt like I was in a constant state of not being present in my own life because I was either anticipating they were about to leave or they were gone. And so I was like attached to my phone, letting my moods be shifted by when I heard from them, or when they were home again, the relief of them coming home again, and then the anticipation of them leaving again. And I couldn't tolerate not living in my own life. And so I think it's a matter of like, what makes you feel grounded in your own life, and what feels destabilizing, and like, where can you make boundaries around that? And just so you know, like, yeah, I just want you to have so many friends all over the place. That's what I want.
And I think it's also okay to notice, like, I find it very fun to be crushed out on someone who lives far away because they're a little unreal. You know what I mean? It's fun to like go on vacation dates, and I mean, there's also a lot of pressure sometimes on those kind of dates because
I've also totally melted under the pressure of those dates.
Yeah, it can be hard to be like, I don't see you at all, and now I'm spending 3 straight days with you or 5 straight days. It's that is challenging, and I recommend that when people are going to go on those dates, they build in separate time alone and stuff like that, which can be hard to do. But depending on everyone's feelings, but there is a question in there of like, what's my intimacy tolerance if I'm often choosing, which there's nothing wrong with that being my intimacy tolerance, but just like, do I think I want to be up close with this person, but actually I really like being at this arm's length with them? Like this is and there's no correct way to have a relationship. It's fine to choose to always date people who live far away, but am I telling myself while I'm doing it that I wish I was like cohabitating with them, and then if I do that, I'll actually not like it because that's actually not what I like. What I like is this,
I think what needs to happen is your partner needs to buy a duplex or rent a duplex or whatever.
Too close.
Too close.
Like apartments on different sides of the same town or something.
Your lover needs to, because this person may or may not have a car while they're there. So a walkable apartment that's yours, that's close to theirs, and you can decide when you're going to see them and not see them. It is so hard to never see someone and then be living together. And you're like, oh my gosh.
It's a lot. There's a lot of preferences you find out about.
There are a lot.
Also, there's a different rhythm when you can have a 1-hour date with someone because they're in town these are all just different pleasures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And good luck to you. Can I just say one more thing? I had a moment at some point in my life, maybe in my early 30s, where I was like, I never do anything crazy because I have Capricorn moon and rising.
God.
And I was like, what if I just didn't? You have a Capricorn rising? I mean, what? Will it ever cease? So then I did some crazy things. Like I went across the world for love. And at the end of the day, it didn't work out and I don't care. Like I just was like, I am doing this. I know the risks. My eyes are wide open. And then I did it and I had a wonderful time. And it just turned out that it wasn't meant to be forever. And not every relationship is meant to be forever. And like, that's like, duh. But it's just that thing of like, no one's failed. Nothing's wrong. It's okay for you to go get to know this person better or even see their city. And then if it doesn't work out, that's just all it is. It just didn't work out. Doesn't mean anything.
And like, let's say you're someone who knows you need a certain kind of support system to be well because of disability, because of mental health stuff, whatever. Maybe don't give all of that up. Like I do think people sometimes make choices for love that are really not self-caring. So it's like how to have enough self-assessment. Like this risk is worth it, or there's a way to take this risk in a less risky way. Like I'm just going to have a temporary leaving of my city for a while, or I'm going to wait until I've created that community in the new place before I go there, or assess whether I could. Like I do think people end up very isolated in love relationships, and some of the worst like harm between lovers comes from being isolated in a relationship, and moving really far away with or for somebody can be literally dangerous. So I do think people should like find out, like, is this a fun adventure or is this a poorly calculated risk that my friends would really advise against? My friends who I trust, not some of your friends are just reacting because they're jealous of your love or whatever. But like, find the sober friendship person who can be like, I'm thinking about through with you in a loving way.
Yeah, and I will say, in my adventurous quests, I have now as an older adult. Now I think backup plans are very important. More than once, I have been in a city that is not my own, let's say New York, and it's been like a Saturday night in New York City, and I have so much luggage and a dog, and I'm like, I don't want to stay at this person's house, and this is my only option because I cannot afford a hotel in New York on Saturday night, last minute notice. And so that's an earlier version of Nicole, maybe let's say early 30s. So now elder Nicole is like, bitch, you need to have like 3 backup plans.
God, I wish you could tell the rest of that story, but it's not appropriate. Anyway.
I mean, I could tell that whole story.
It's so good. Your listeners deserve it.
My listeners deserve, that's bonus.
We should have Morgan on for that episode.
This is bonus content for the Patreon.
Oh, yeah. But like extra, is there like a gold Patreon level of platinum?
You have to be in Hermes Creep Club to hear this on Patreon, which is the $20 club, to hear this story. I know it's kind of a lot. The honorary Sagittarian is only $6. I'll tell it to you for that.
You're too cheap. I'm just saying.
You think Hermes Creep Club should be more than $20?
She's like $1,000.
To hear this story?
That's where it's gold.
Okay, if you join my Patreon at $1,000 a year or a month.
Oh, like a one lifetime member kind of thing.
Oh, one lifetime membership of $1,000. I will tell you any story I would tell my friends.
That's a good deal.
That's a good deal.
I've paid nothing for this relationship so far. Oh,
no, you did. You gifted me Marco Polo Plus.
I cooked you tofu.
You cooked me tofu, and it was exactly what I wanted.
I made tahini sauce.
In terms of polyamory, must disconnect have to happen in order for connection to occur? Such as when you leave one partner to be with the other and they feel disconnected. Does that have to happen?
You spray a handkerchief with your perfume. You leave it in your lover's bed. You're never gone. All right, what's the answer to this question?
I love the accent right now a lot, and I do need a handkerchief. Yeah, I mean, we don't ask this question about our other friendships.
I mean,
we're not like, just the two of us, exclusive possession. But, like, I'm not like, oh, I'm going on a date and I'm leaving Nicole's house, so I have to disconnect from Nicole. Like, no, of course not. Like, we are, even if we feel disconnected, like if someone's feeling jealous, they may feel disconnected, like, oh, like, I can't reach my lover right now because they're on their date and I'm jealous. You're still connected. You're still in each other's lives. You're still actually in a very intimate emotional system. That's why you feel so activated. So I think that the image of disconnection is misleading here. Maybe people are practicing boundaries, like I'd like us to not text while I'm on my date. That is great. People should make the requests they need. Everyone gets to say yes or no to whether or not they want to have certain kinds of contact at certain times. But we're not actually disconnected. And actually part of healing the kind of problems of romance culture telling us that relationships need to be exclusive and possessive and all these things is reminding ourselves that when our friends or lovers go and connect with others, it actually isn't taking anything away from us. And it just appears to because of this like scarcity model in which we're living. And so when I'm feeling that, and I am a jealous person, I do sometimes feel that, my job is to like be nice to myself, comfort myself, talk to a friend, maybe, before the date or after the date, ask my lover, will you remind me that we're still connected and that you didn't like forget about me forever when you went and kissed somebody else, like whatever it is each person needs, but it's not true. I think that's just key. Even if maybe like distracted, like maybe they're not thinking about me the whole time they're there, but it doesn't change that like if I need them tomorrow to take me to the hospital, they will, or like they still want to be connected to me. And I think that I just think that the disconnect is the insecure story.
Yeah. Are you trying to say there's no scarcity, Dean?
There is material scarcity, but not about connection, actually.
Are you saying there's enough love for everyone?
Right now, people aren't getting enough love because we're living in like isolated numbness, distraction, consumption, like a bunch of really hard habits. But as we liberate ourselves from that, there is more than enough. All humans are is like a bunch of connection and relationships.
Wait, can you talk more about that kind of distraction, consumption thing?
Yeah.
And how it applies to love?
Yeah, I mean, there's, like endless research about how we're more isolated than ever, more people live alone than ever, more people report not having a single person to tell their good news or bad news to. People live, it's often called like in the self-help literature, like communities of two, like their only connection is their lover if they have a lover or spouse, whatever. And this is like incredibly toxic for us. And then people spend like an enormous amount of time on screens, and we have like the best entertainment culture of all time while like literally the world spirals down the toilet. And, human society implodes because of greed. And so it's a very hard time to like find connection. Like people feel very avoidant of connection. They don't want to talk to anybody. They don't want to go to any events. They don't want to connect with anybody, even though they're desperately lonely. Like this is like our time to orient towards like what's true. So like the feelings of avoidance may not be true. They may be a reasonable response and reaction to a culture of intense coercion and violence, but they're not truly what we want. So you're like, okay, what do I actually want? And then what are the actual practical steps to getting it, even if they require being brave or doing something uncomfortable or kind of having to break ties with something that's really compelling, like watching TV a lot or video games or things that have kind of become comforts, which is totally reasonable, but maybe in the way, or like I need to spend less time with family members who make me feel bad about myself, and really find a peer group through doing some activity that made me be nervous about launching into all of this kind of stuff, like, and one of the big results of this is that the romance myth is more powerful. There's all this interesting research about how people believe more than they used to that what they want is a love connection, and that's like, and what they want out of, like, people used to rank what they wanted in marriage as like more things like about like compatibility or like good naturedness or like domestic capacity with each other, things like that. And now people are like, I want love. There's like a fantasy. I think gay marriage made this a lot worse. That like love is a place of like dignity and belonging and total bliss. Instead of like, it's just another one or multiple of your relationships that are like flawed, and just do some of the things you need them to do and don't do others. And we all need lots of people in our lives and get satisfaction in lots of places. But the extreme isolation and the hope of only having it all in one place, I think makes people more desperate for it, more picky, sometimes more picky about it, and unwilling to accept anybody, like unwilling to try what's on offer if it's not like the perfect thing they were seeking, more anxious about it and like harder on each other, more critical. And then having relationships when they get them that are more isolated, and then it's super toxic. If you're in a relationship with just one person, we saw this during the early days of COVID. People's relationships got so much worse when they were locked in a house with one other person, right? Like, it's really bad to be isolated in any one relationship. Many people can say this about if they were raised by one caregiver, it can be just too much. And so, just two people in like a dynamic. So, the answer to this, one of the big points of my book is that we all need like very robust, promiscuous support systems. We need lots and lots of people in our lives, like some of whom we love to eat dinner with, and some of whom we love to talk politics with, and some of whom, we like to dance with, and some of whom we like to read poetry with, and some of whom we like to cry with about certain things that happened to us. And like no one person is going to be all those things for you. And that's not because they're bad. We don't need to criticize them or be like, he's not the one for you or any of that. It's just because we all need lots of people to do lots of things with, so that also if you lose any of them, you aren't alone, Yeah. When I think about older adults, like so many of our friends are caring for their older parents who are just utterly alone. There's no reason for anyone to be alone in this society, much less for like 75% of people to be alone when they're all alone. They could all be with each other. Like, it's just so heartbreaking, Yeah. And the time to work on that with ourselves is right now, before the next obstacle enters our lives that makes it even harder to connect with others. Because there are like real things that make it hard, like disability, illness, grief. Like there's, so like any ability you have right now to connect with anyone is worth like cultivating and working that muscle.
Yeah. I do want to tell you, because I brought up the senior center. The ladies at the senior center, they were all widows, and they were psyched. They had each other. Yeah. Truly, there was isolation in that everyone like was institutionalized in some way, like had to get bussed in and like wasn't in charge of every part of their life. But when they were there together as a unit, new friends, old friends, they were all so glad to not be burdened with their lifelong spouses.
God, I'm so glad I don't have a husband. Dodged a bullet.
Okay. Do you have time for a few more?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Hi, Nicole and Dean Spade. My question for you all together is, what is our individual and collective responsibility to people we have loved who are struggling with their mental health? Maybe that's the whole question you can use, but if you want a little more context, it's like, can you still be abolitionist while blocking someone online? And like, if it becomes too difficult to engage with someone, like what, if anything, do we owe them on an individual or community level? Thank you.
I do want to say, like, I think that the tools of programs like Al-Anon and Codependence Anonymous and those kinds of tools are helpful for those of us who are in relationships with people in crisis, which many of us are, and where we live in a society which abandons people in crisis. So you may be like, I'm the only one for them to call, or you become someone's like only support system and also possibly their target. That's like a common, of course, right? So I think like, yes, it's absolutely okay to draw boundaries with people. you don't owe anyone your well-being, your sanity, your health. And in an ideal world, when people are going into crisis in our communities, we work to find a more robust and mixed support system for them and for us. So like if I'm caring for someone, I'm connected to them as a friend or a lover or a family member. It's like, I'm like, okay, what's the broad support system I need? And what's the support system they need? And how much of any of that can we get? How can we build teams around everyone? And yes, it can be appropriate to have boundaries. What I have found is when I haven't done enough of the support building, then later I've needed a much stronger boundary.
Mm-hmm.
And so is there any way to like kind of think ahead about, wow, crisis is really common. What are the kinds of support systems we put in place? And also for all of us to be ready to be called on for a support system. So if Nicole is like, I have a friend in crisis, and I'm like, well, I don't really know that person, but Nicole asked me. So maybe I'm the best idea she has right now for somebody to call. So I'm going to join, even though I don't really know that person, because guess what? I love everyone. I want everyone to be well. And I love Nicole, and Nicole's supporting this person. And so if we were all a little more available to help be part of broad crisis teams, which doesn't mean I have to be available 24/7, but I could be like, yes, I can visit once a week, Nicole, or yes, I can be the person you call after midnight, or yes, I'll look up all of the, support groups for people who've been through what your friend has been through and see if we can find any that she likes or whatever, like just having it be not alone. Because I think in most cases, we get to the point of having to like draw a firm line with somebody because everybody in the situation has been too isolated.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a million situations. This is like very generalized, but I do feel like what I want the most is more collective and mutual support around crisis.
And can you still be an abolitionist while blocking someone online?
Yeah, that's like what I was saying before about how it's like absolutely like having boundaries is an abolitionist thing to do. Abolitionism isn't about like letting everyone do anything they want to us. It's actually about having self-generated safety so that we don't have the fantasy of calling an outside authority to come in and protect us. We actually protect each other and ourselves. So that can include being like, I don't want to see that person anymore. Or I don't want to talk to that person anymore or hear from them. That is, I would like us not to go there first. I do think that we live in a society where we are a little bit too like eager to throw people away. So finding that balance is really hard. It's something to know about ourselves. Am I somebody who is like unwilling to ever have a boundary? Or am I somebody who throws people away the first time I feel scared? And if you're not sure which side you're going on, ask a friend. Like, does it seem balanced that I'm thinking about stopping contact with this person? And your friend might be like, you kind of go to that as soon as you get scared. Or your friend might be like, yes, that's a great idea. That seems important to your wellness. I've been thinking that might be good for you.
Yeah. I think that's correct. Okay, I have a couple Instagram questions. Are you ready for them?
Ready.
Okay, let's do it. Dean, it's so lovely to have you on the podcast. It's so late at night. It's like 4:00 in the morning by my time.
Yeah.
9:25. And we're answering these questions, and it's just a joy. We could record 17 hours of questions.
I think we should.
Okay, great. One moment. I have a question for Dean Spade. Me and my ex had a very messy breakup and no longer talk because mending things was not possible. We were comrades and collaborators, and us not talking feels counter-revolutionary to the movements we are a part of and unhelpful to our community and shared goals and projects. I want it to be different, but I am so hurt. Any advice from Dean? Thank you. You're getting advice from Nicole, which is, I know you want it to be different, but it's not, and I'm really sorry. Sometimes something's just really uncomfortable, and sometimes it's just painful, and you just need more time so that when you do re-engage, you're not hurting yourself.
Yeah, it's okay to take time to have a breakup change and process through you and see if you can have a more neutral feeling towards the person that may be useful for collaborating. Also, there's things we can do to practice that. So like, don't gossip about the person. Don't look for information that will make you feel worse. Don't invite people to gossip with you about them.
We have to make a boundary around that.
Yeah, cultivate loving kindness towards them. Like it's like, or even cultivating neutrality, like holding them in your heart and hoping that they'll be well. Like something it doesn't have to be like, I hope they're like happy and delighted with their new lover. You don't have to go there. But you can just be like, may they be well. I often have done an imagination when I kind of can't feel like I can't untangle from somebody and I keep thinking the thoughts. I just picture them on their own life path, which is running parallel to mine, not intersecting. Like, wow, look, they're over there on their life path. I hope they're okay there, or, may they be safe there. Like whatever I can actually sincerely feel, not some pie in the sky feeling, but just like their path is running over there. It's okay. I've also done this visualization a lot. Pack up all the stuff I imagine in my psyche that's theirs and send it to them in a box and imagine them opening the box. Like, I don't need to hold on to like whatever sticky memories or ideas I have about them. I don't know about them. Let them have all that stuff back in a loving way. It's not like a mean, like, take all your stuff back. It's just like we're two separate people. And I think when we've been in weird dynamics, people love relationships, we can forget that we're two separate people. So any visualization that helps me, people do cord cuttings. You just like take a piece of rope or string and you imagine that it's the cord between you and you cut it and wish them well and wish yourself well and imagine yourself like whole and separate and not connected by all these strings.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful. And just have faith in the communities that you guys have built together, that it will be okay. And it's not reliant on you pushing past your comfort level with your feelings before you're ready. This one is very near and dear to my heart, and we're almost done, just so everyone has expectation management. Dear Dean and Nicole, I want to know of ways and also just get some hope in terms of dating as a queer person who is disabled from COVID. I just broke up with my long-term girlfriend who took a ton of COVID precautions for me, but just not enough. And my disability just weighed heavy on my mental health and on our relationship as a whole and our ability to find ways to make it work. I'm heartbroken and don't have community around me who are COVID safe, and I just feel like I lost everything in breaking up with my girlfriend, even though there is a sense of relief and safety in isolation from a COVID perspective. I'm just deeply sad. I'm trying to focus on what I can do and start working in mutual aid at my school and in my city to find some community. Good. But I just want some advice on how to keep going as everyone, especially other queer people, even ones who say they love me, leave me and other disabled people behind so painfully. Thank you so much. From COVID Conscious in Connecticut.
Yeah, this is so real. I just want to first be like, the first thing is just grief. Like, it is so hideous that we are living in a society that is so openly eugenicist and like happy to let people with disabilities and old people and anyone die of COVID and just as like denying COVID. It's just horrible. And it's so painful that it's so hard for us to live our values. And it's so beautiful that you are doing work in your community that may help you find more people who share your experiences. And all of us can be building more spaces that care about disability justice as we build them, whether that's like online communities, whether that's things that are happening in our cities, like caring about that, learning about that. Like when I hear stories like this, I'm like, this person's isolation is not their problem. It's all of our problem. And we all have an obligation to change it. And this person is also doing what's needed to try to find some people while we're waiting for that level of collective action to happen. You can't wait for that because in our society, things are mostly going in the wrong direction. So yeah, it's like, yes, we have to all like kind of like try to eke out social lives that can work for us given these structural barriers. And everyone can work harder to care about how we're co-producing those barriers. And that, yeah, I really feel for this. It's so meaningful. I've been really encountering this going on this book tour because the bookstores won't require masks. And so I'm just doing all the Instagram things are going to say, wear a mask, and I'm going to bring masks and I'm going to hand them out. And I'm just going to be like, and obviously masks are not the end all be all of COVID precautions, but they do help some people feel more able to attend it. Not everybody. But I'm just like, it's so hard that even just that simple step that is just like, there's so many obstacles just even to that wouldn't even be enough for a lot of people to be able to go there, but it would help some, Anyway, this is just a really real thing, not to mention just like ableism that and all the other hierarchies of desirability pieces that come in where people are excluded from a lot of erotic space because of what gets considered desirable and undesirable. This stuff is just really realized. It's interesting to write this book and try to be like, the thing I most don't want to bring in from the self-help literature is the idea that like it's all in your head and you could be happy if you just thought the right thoughts it's like, no, there are actual horrible, oppressive conditions that impact people's ability to find connection, love, sex, friendship that are really happening. And we also have internal conditions that we can work on that can shift some of what that's like. But just to
intuitive
acknowledge
with you.
the external conditions are real.
Yeah.
And I think grief is the appropriate response to them and collective action.
Yeah. And caller, I'm with you. I have also, it's weird to have had a community before pandemic and then have that community shift when you are somebody who doesn't want to get sick. And you're like, oh, I thought I had something different than what's happening right now. It's just a really hard feeling. And it's just a lot of grief. The end. We have one more question from a caller, and then I have a question for you that I wanted to ask you. First, a question from the caller. Ready for your last advice question?
Ready.
I have a question for Dean Spade on love. How can trans men combat the desire to perform masculinity that might not be authentic? Wait, so sorry. What does that say? That might not be authentic is what they want to say?
Then might not.
Okay. How can trans men combat the desire to perform masculinity that might not be authentic to attract a partner when it feels like that performance is intricately connected to passing and lovability? From Passing in Pasadena.
I love this question because how can all people stop performing gender stereotypes to try to be lovable and sexy? I mean, because it's just like, it's so great to be trans because at least we know we're doing it. To me, we're like, oh yeah, this whole thing is completely fake. So yeah, I think the real question for me, it's been very helpful when I've experienced what I would consider maybe like a form of internalized transphobia or gender policing of oneself, and believing you'll be more desirable if you fit something that you imagine people want. Of course, there are people who want everything, so that's been really helpful. Being on the gay sex apps will remind you that whatever kind of freak you are, there's somebody out there for you. But I think that piece around just being like, what do I have to expose myself to remind me that like the weirdest, most amazing genders are hot. And so that I don't have to think I have to be a narrower one than I want to be on any given day in order to be desirable. Like, and for me, I've always had friends who were just like freakier than me, I feel spacious when I'm around them. I'm like, look at that person go. Okay, I can probably be me. You know what I mean? Like just having wonderful, so like just being part of queer culture or reading about queer culture or like immersing yourself in things that show you the beauty of people being weird and freaky and like having interesting genders and sexualities and having it not line up or not be consistent over their lifetimes or over the course of the week. All of that can help us like shake off the idea that there is a desirable way to perform our gender, which then I believe could potentially be useful to everyone on earth because gender norms are, junky.
Yeah. Dean, is there anything, before I ask you my last question, is there anything from your book or any major talking points that you want to make sure you mention because we didn't get to it with the callers?
I think one of the main points of the book that I hope people engage with is just the idea that when I am in a very strong state, jealousy, anger, blame, it is possible to have a millimeter of distance to be like, I'm in a strong state. So instead of identifying with me like I am that state, I must do what it says. It can be like, I'm in a strong state. What do I need to be loved and supported? It's just this little, and for me, jealousy is a really good example because I think jealousy is something people find intolerable. And jealousy, its message is, I am intolerable. And I experience jealousy. And so it can be like, this is intolerable. I cannot do this. I must change things, or somebody else must change. Somebody's wrong. I'm bad. They're bad. And it's amazing to be like, oh, I'm in a strong state called jealousy. That's so hard. That sounds hard, Dean. Wow. Like that move is everything. No longer am I like, and then Nicole didn't call me this time and she didn't text me and then this other person and then I'm the worst. Other people aren't jealous like this. What's wrong with me? Like instead it's like, oh, wow, you're in a hard state. It doesn't feel good. That's hard. That's just true.
Yeah.
Like I'm not having to make anything up about how I'm okay or there. No, just, wow, that's hard. This is how it is right now. That move can really prevent me from being a total dick to other people.
Can we, I know I said I still haven't asked my last question,
Right.
but I keep asking other questions and threatening to ask a last question. Can we talk about the importance really quick I know it sounds basic, but it just isn't, of not stuffing your feelings. Because there's one thing for you to like, it's one thing, the one thing you're saying, which is valuable on its own, end of sentence, is like jealousy, like in this strong state, not over-identifying with it, not letting it take the wheel, stopping and being like, this is what's happening. But also all these other feelings that are coming up for people as they're in relationships, there's kind of still that judgment around certain feelings, and just like the value in feeling the feeling, like, but this feeling's uncomfortable. I would prefer not to feel this. And just being like, it's just uncomfortable right now, and that's all it is. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to like figure out your pattern right now. It doesn't mean that you need to solve your childhood right now. It doesn't mean that you need to like put this person on trial in your head. It's just uncomfortable.
Yeah. And, you know,
And stay with yourself. Don't split the scene.
Yeah, don't split the scene. That's from our teacher, Rena Weissman. Not, bad feelings can be sometimes motivation to be like, oh, maybe the situation doesn't work for me. Like, you know, it's okay. But like, there is just not good or bad feelings. Like, we live lives in human bodies. We'll sometimes feel sad. We'll sometimes feel angry, bored, jealous, impatient. Like, when we then label them bad and are like, I need to get rid of this feeling and I'm bad for having this feeling, like all of that is just like piling on, right? Or I'm going to suppress this feeling and I'm going to like escape it using any number of things that might turn into like an imbalanced relationship later, you know, with sex, drugs, TV, sugar, whatever.
Or even
right?
your phone.
Phones.
Not even giving yourself a minute to have the
to
feeling.
feel anything. Yeah. So I think that it's like, it's not only not stuffing them, but it's like, guess what? You're alive. Sometimes you feel weird. Like, it's like accepting that there's a range of human emotion. And also, I mean, to be honest, like some of the like situations and relationships where I've been the most uncomfortable in my life, if I was able to know what was happening and not just act it out, I like built a lot more self and could tolerate a lot more then, and actually like had a deeper ground on which to experience hard things if they came up, and feel myself more and feel stable and behave in ways that aligned with my values more and maintain relationships instead of losing them. Like, it's okay and worth it to experience strong sensations if while we're doing it, we're relating to ourselves kindly. It'll actually build more capacity. If it's all stuffing or rejecting or becoming so involved in it that I dump it all on you and treat you terribly, then I might, you know, have a lot more regret and struggle, you know. But that piece, it's like, it's almost like everybody thinks everyone else is happy and relaxed and steady, and I'm the only one going through this. And it's like, the reality is we're all like totally out of our minds, and it's a really, really, really particularly hard time to be alive. And it's reasonable that we are activated and acting up in different ways. And like, if we can find some company and some like acceptance that this is how it is right now, and tune into like any sense of caring towards ourselves and others, it's like kind of the only way through.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, here's my actual last question. Dean, sometimes when bad things are happening in the world, like people, like the planet, people killing the planet, genocide, etc., I've heard people say like, oh, you know, can't wait for the human race to be over. Humans are horrible. I wish humans would just all die. Things would be so much better. Oh, humans. How will you tell listeners what you told me when I asked you, like, Dean, I'm getting into major despair. I'm hearing about, it was like last year, I was hearing about the genocide. I was getting into major despair. I was having such a hard time having compassion for every human being. What did you say? What do you think?
Yeah. I think it's a huge mistake to say this is humans, because actually what's doing this is states. Humans have resisted the creation of militaries, wars, borders, capitalist extraction, slavery, pollution at every turn. And small numbers of elites have dominated, most people, and at this point dominate almost the entire globe with the state form. It's actually really new. You know, most of the human history people weren't dominated by states. We can talk about that more anytime you want, anybody. But when we say that, like it's the same way as if I'm like, if I talk as if I'm the United States, I'm like, we're sending our money to Israel. I'm not fucking sending the money to Israel. Like, I did not agree to that. I did not agree to U.S. wars. I did not agree to U.S. colonialism and imperialism. Most humans didn't, right? Small numbers of elites created systems that produce this. But when we over-identify with the things that our oppressors have done to benefit small numbers of elites, we're actually giving over so much. Humans are amazing. Humans want to defend the earth. Humans are deeply invested in connecting with each other. Humans are not naturally greedy. That's a capitalist racist story. Humans are not naturally patriarchal. All of these things that we've been told. Humans are naturally into like surviving and collective resilience. And we live under horrible systems that are right now like really dominating like kind of all of the day-to-day of our lives and telling us that we consented to it, that we chose it, that we're part of a social contract that we agreed to. I did not sign any contract. I was just born here in this time. And so our actual job is to resist and like feel our human animalness, our natural capacities to connect, to care, to fight back, and not concede that this is like, that it's our nature to like, ecocide is not human nature. Humans lived for tens of thousands of years and did not commit ecocide.
I love that. Thank you, Dean. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. How are you ever going to edit this? It's so long.
It's just going to go up its entirety. I just, in the past 5 seconds, thought, oh, I should have been videotaping this.
We do look cute.
We look great.
Nothing else.
Can we just schedule another podcast episode where we...
I would like this to be my full-time job.
Me too.
To you.
Me too.
I mean, we do spend pretty much all day every day talking on Marco Polo. It kind of is our full-time job. Unpaid.
Yeah. That's okay. I'll write a grant or something.
I would pay to do this.
I would pay to do this too.
Yeah.
I would pay like at least like $25 an hour to hang out with you.
I would just give you everything I have.
Sick.
What else am I using it for?
No, this is it.
Yeah.
This is my human animal nature.
Would you give me Ponyo?
If you wanted her.
I do.
Okay.
Okay.
Sagittarian Matters is hosted and produced by me, Nicole J. Georges, with help from Ponyo Georges. Our executive producer is Chris Sutton, and our editor is Shanna Polley. Carolyn Pennypacker-Riggs composed and performed our theme music. Please leave your 5-star reviews for us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, and find us on Instagram at Sagittarian Matters. You can support our show on Patreon, patreon.com/Nicole J. Georges. Thank you for your support. See you next time.
Sagittarian Matters.